So this is video 2. Continue with me on the notes, please. Video 2 with slope formula. We're going to use this formula to be able to calculate the slope of a line when you don't see it, when they just tell you 2 points of the line. For example, let's say you don't see the line, but I tell you there's a line that passes through the point -4, and 2, -3. We're going to use this formula to find the slope, the rise over run. So what we're going to do is, first of all, understand that any coordinate is really an x and y value. So you have an xy value there and an xy value there. So if I tell you, hey, look at x, what's the value of x? You're going to be thinking, well, I don't know if he's talking about the -4 or if he's talking about the -2, right? So this is why we put the little note x sub 1 and y sub 1. All that says is it's telling us that you're looking at the x from your first point. And obviously these other ones are going to be x2 and y2. All it says, that way I could tell you, look at x2. Oh, he's talking about this one over here. Look at y1. Oh, he's talking about this one right here, right? So that's why we label them x1, y1, x2, y2. It's simply x from your first point and y from your first point. It's x and y from your second point. And now we could use this formula. So let me tell you how to use this formula, guys. Always start with this. M equals fraction bar subtraction. Always start with that. Hopefully you guys are keeping up with your notes right now. Now, what belongs on the top left? Well, right here it says y sub 2. So what belongs up here, guys? What is y sub 2? -3, right? So let's put a -3 right in there. And how about y sub 1? What's y sub 1? -4. So -4 belongs right there. And down here is a x sub 2. We need it right here, x sub 2. What's x sub 2? -2. And we also have a x sub 1, which is -4. Now notice, this is why I put the division and the subtractions, because sometimes I will have negatives here, which is going to cause them both to change the plus plus, because a minus minus changes a plus plus. That's why it's so important that you start with the division, subtraction, subtraction, and then you plug in your values. So now our minus minus changes to plus plus, and we really have -3 plus 4. What is -3 plus 4? That's 1. And how about -2 plus 4? 2. So what's our slope? 1/2. So you see, we found the slope of the line that passes through -4, and 2, -3. It rises 1, runs 2. Now, if you actually saw this line visually, which you can by looking up here, I selected these coordinates on purpose. -4 is right here. -2, -3, -2, -3 is right here. So from here to here, you go up 1 over 2. You see how that slope is 1/2? So we calculated the slope without actually counting rise over run. We used algebra. We used the slope formula. So we have a lot of practice to do up here. Let's take a look at these following examples. So number 1, the first thing to do is to know your slope formula. There it is, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And after you write down your formula, you want to go to your actual points and recognize which ones are the x1, the y1, the x2, and the y2. Again, the coordinates are simply x and y values. And that's exactly why we label this one 1, 1, because I want to call this my first point. I want to label this 2, 2, because I'm calling that one my second point. So again, it's just notation. X sub 2 really means the x value of not my first point, but of my second point. Y sub 1 means my y value of my first point. So that's why we label them x1, y1, x2, y2. And now we could actually apply the formula. And again, you want to start always by doing the division and the subtractions. And then plugging in your y2 up on the top left. y2 is 6, so let's put the 6 right there. y1 is 2. y1 is 2, so let's put the 2 right there. And then we have our x2 down here, which is 5, so we're going to put the 5 right there. And last but not least, the x1 is 3, so let's put the x1, the 3 right there. and we have the work that we need to do. This is why we started the class opener on the top left part of this paper by just doing simple math with numerators and denominators. So right here, 6 take away 2 is 4, and 5 take away 3 is 2. So the slope is 4 over 2. Now 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now if you wanted to explain what the slope is in terms of rise over run, you would rise 2 and would run 1. Okay? So if you were at a certain point, you go up 2 units over 1 unit and you draw your line. Number 2, find the slope of the line that passes through those 2 points. So once again, let's label it x1, y1, x2, y2. And after that, again, know the slope formula. And yes, you're going to have to memorize this formula, okay? This is work right here. You have to memorize the formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It's kind of like everything's backwards, right? It's your y2 first before your 1, x2 first before your 1, and the y's are on top. You know, x is before y, but right here we're putting the y's first up on top, x is on the bottom. So it's kind of like everything's backwards. So that's our slope formula. Let's apply it now. Again, always start with this and plug in your actual values. y2 is 11, y1 is 8, x2 is 8, x1 is 4. And then you do the simple math. 11 take away 8 is 3. 8 take away 4 is 4. And there is my slope. M equals 3/4. You rise 3, you run 4. Positive slope. You can't reduce it, so we're done with this slope. By the way, all this stuff is going to be on Thursday's quiz. We have a quiz this Thursday. It's going to be on slope, and it's also going to be on standard form and finding x and y intercepts, stuff that we did last week. Let's move on to the next one. How about you guys try numbers 3 and 4 right now? Go for it. If you're at home, hit pause, try to do it, and then play it the rest so you can see the explanation. Once again, let's label them. And then after that, let's know the formula. And then after that, let's write our formula. Let's apply our formula by starting off with this and then plugging in our y2 value, top left, which is going to be 1, our y1 value on top right, which will be -5, and on the bottom left is x2, that's going to be -9, and on the bottom right, it's going to be x1, which is -4. And again, whenever you have the minus minus, change it to plus plus, and we will have 6 up on top and -5 on the bottom, correct? Now, again, let's never leave a negative sign on the bottom. We either put it right here in the middle or move it up to the top. Now, the reason why I say that is because when we look at lines, we always want to see the run as being positive. So I'm going to simply take this negative sign and put it either up here with the 6 or just out here in front of the fraction. Here we go. The final answer is m equals -6/5. That's our final slope. Let's move on to the next one. There they are labeled. There's my formula. This is how I apply it. So let's plug in the y2 value of 8, the y1 value of 1, the x2 value of 7, and the x1 value of -7. So we now have the plus plus on the bottom. We have 8 take away 1, that is 7 up on top. And 7 plus 7 is 14 on the bottom. So our final answer is m equals 1/2. Now sometimes when we are working out the formula, when we're working out the slope, you might end up with the 0 on top. Sometimes you might end up with the 0 on the bottom, and that produces some weird situations. So down here are the notes for those situations. It says if you get a 0 up on top, then the answer is 0. Because 0 divided by anything is still 0, right? If you say 0 divided by 2, it's like you have nothing, split it into 2, it's still nothing, right? Now, if you get a 0 on the bottom, then the answer is undefined. Fact is, you cannot divide by 0. If you get a calculator and you put 10 divided by 0, hit equal, it's going to say undefined. It's going to say error. So it's not going to be able to work. Let's actually practice with these guys right here. Number 1, you label your values first, and then you write your formula. Then after that, you apply your formula by starting off with the division and the subtraction, and then plugging in your values, y2, which is -2, y1, which is 5, x2, which is -3, x1, which is -3. And when you do the math, on the denominator, you see the minus minus changing to plus plus. So you really do end up with a 0 on the bottom, because -3 plus 3 is 0. And up on top, you have a -7. It doesn't even matter what you have up on top. Anytime you have a 0 underneath, it is undefined. So undefined is your slope. Technically, visually, that means that it's a vertical line, straight up and down. So we need to remember, when 0 is underneath, it is undefined. Undy, underneath, undefined. Okay? But if the 0 is on top, then the answer is 0. Let's move on to number 2 over here. And let's first label the values, x1, y1, x2, y2. After that, let's write our formula down, m equals. And then after that, let's apply it by starting with the division and the subtraction. It's very important you start with that. And now let's plug in our y2 value of 4 right here, our y1 value of 4 right here. So we have 4 minus 4, and on the bottom we have x2, which is -3, minus x1, which is positive 3. And of course, up on top, 4 take away 4 is 0, and on the bottom is -6. Now, 0 over any number is going to be 0. You have nothing to start with, so the slope is simply 0. The answer for the slope, 0. What does that mean? That it's totally flat. It's a horizontal line. It's flat like the floor that you see in the classroom, right? It's not steep at all. It's the opposite of steep. It's flat, so m equals 0. Let's check out this one. Again, label them. And again, know your formula. And of course, apply your formula with the division and the subtractions first, and then plug in your values. Y sub 2 is 3, y sub 1 is 1/2, x sub 2 is -5, x sub 1 is -5. So right off the bat, I see the minus minus, they change. I already know that I have 0 on the bottom, because -5 plus 5 is 0. Doesn't matter what I have on top, 3 take away half, I could just stop right there, because any number over 0 is going to be undefined. So m equals undefined. Again, you cannot divide by 0. Try it on a calculator, it'll say error. You can't do it. So m is undefined. So not only am I going to ask you to calculate slope, which is with the slope formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, but I'm also going to ask you to find missing values in the situation where I give you the slope. So for example, this is actually the bottom part of your homework. It says find the value of r so that the line that passes through each pair of points has the given slope. So if we take a look at number 20 here, they give us 2 coordinates. So our line passes through this point and this point, and we know that the slope is rise 2 over run 1, but we need to find out this missing value. So what we're going to do is use the slope formula, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And again, we're going to label the coordinates x1, y1, x2, y2. Now the thing is this, we already know what slope is. So this formula that we're about to use, we already know that the answer is going to be 2. Okay? So what we're going to do now is create an equation from what we know to find out what we don't know. Okay? So let me first rewrite the formula, y2 minus y1, but with the values in there. So again, I'm going to rewrite my equation, put the minus here, the minus there, but I'm plugging in my y2 value of 9, y1 value of 3, x2 value of 5, x1 value of r, and we know it equals 2. So there's my equation. And we're going to have to solve this equation. Now, the problem is we have r in the denominator. As a matter of fact, we don't even want this fraction at all. So let's get rid of this fraction by multiplying everything by what? By the denominator, which happens to be 5 minus r. So it's actually multiplied by 5 minus r. That way the 5 minus r on top will cancel with the 5 minus r on the bottom. But what you do to one side, you must do to the other side. So again, 5 minus r on top cancels with the 5 minus r on the bottom. And what do we have left? We have 9 minus 3 equals 2 times 5, which is 10, and 2 times negative r, which is negative 2r. So we really have 6 on the left side. 9 minus 3 is 6 equals 10 minus 2r. And we need to get r by itself. So what we do next is subtract 10 on both sides. And we're going to have a new equation. Let me write it up here. A new equation will be 6 minus 10 is negative 4, equaling negative 2r. So for my final step, I need to get rid of that negative 2 that's being multiplied with the r. I'm going to divide by negative 2 and divide by negative 2. That way the negative 2 cancels, and we have r equaling positive 2. So r equals 2. There's your answer for this problem. Again, we plugged in everything that they gave us. We plugged in the coordinates, we plugged in the slope, and we found the missing value r. Let's try another one. Let's try number 22. That one has a fraction as a slope. Let's try that one. Again, we're going to label the coordinates. We are going to write down our formula. And we're going to plug in our values. Once again, we know that this formula gives us a slope, and the slope is 1/2. So you could actually plug in the 1/2 right here in place of m, or you could put it on this side, or whatever you want. On the other one, I put the m on this side. Let me put this 1/2 over here. So here's my equation. 1/2 equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. y2 is 3, y1 is 2, x2 is 6, x1 is r. So we have this proportion. A fraction equals a fraction. You could cross multiply if you wanted to. Or you could simply get rid of the fraction by multiplying both sides by 6 minus r. But of course, it'd be good to simplify first. Up here we have 3 take away 2. That's really a 1 over 6 minus r equaling 1/2. So let's multiply both sides by 6 minus r. So right here it cancels. Over here it doesn't cancel. So you could distribute the 1/2. 1/2 times 6 and 1/2 times r. You could do that. There's many roads to the same place here. So if you did distribute 1/2 times 6, 1/2 times 6 is 3, and 1/2 times negative r is simply negative 1/2 r. And it does equal 1. And then you could get rid of the 3 by subtracting 3. And you have a new equation that says negative 1/2 r equals negative 2. And you can multiply both sides by 2, giving you negative r equaling negative 4. So your final answer is going to be r equals 4 to that one. The negative sign on the 4? Let me zoom in. So at this point, I have a negative r. I don't want a negative r. I want a positive r. So I could multiply both sides by negative 1, and that'll change to a positive r. That'll change to a positive 4.